Well, folks, this is the first of many to come blogs, videos. I am the professor of financial education. I have a radio show on a local radio station called The Financial Coach on WBBP-WMBA. And my purpose and mission is really to provide truth and honest education about the financial world, how to circumvent losses, and how to end up with the maximum amount of wealth potential that you can have by avoiding losses. You know, when I meet people, they always ask me a question, what do you do? I find money for people they're losing unknowingly and unnecessarily. I show them how to get it back and turn it into tax-free dollars. That's an important statement. And people say, well, what's that all about? And I'll say, well, can I ask you a question? Are you 100% sure you're going to have a great retirement, or do you have some doubt? And they agree, and they have some doubt. And I say, well, can I ask you another question? What if I can show you how to be debt-free in 9 years or less, including your mortgage, and maybe even some student loans, with no additional out-of-pocket cost? Would you want to have a meeting and have a discussion about that? And at this meeting, I will make you two promises. Number one, I won't ask you to buy anything. And promise number two, there will not be a second meeting unless you desire it. I'm not going to chase you or flood you with emails and all of those kind of things. But our topic today, I really want to start out today, and my first topic is interest rates. I'm really enamored right now with what's going on in the news media about the interest rates. They're talking about the economy, and the feds have raised the interest rates, and that is causing the economy to slow down. And now the 10-year treasuries have fallen a little bit under 2%. And that simply means if you give the government $10,000, they're going to pay you about $200 in interest for that $10,000. So let's look at this thing and step back and look down from 30,000 feet. And I look at it that way. Let's go back to 2007, when the interest rates on a 10-year treasury was 6%. So you could loan the federal government $10,000, they'd pay you 6% interest. Now, we know in 2008, there was a so-called bank meltdown. That'll be a topic for another blog, but really what happened is AIG, the big company, they made an investment decision and were providing credit default swaps on the mortgage portfolios that weren't as creditworthy as they were reasonably led to be. And that's another story. But let's talk about interest rates today and stay on that topic. So over the last 11 years, the national debt in 2008 was approximately $8 trillion. At 6% interest on $8 trillion, that was $440 to $480 billion a year in interest on the government's debt. And that's the credit card that you and I are part of. They would just give the government the ability to spend on our credit card, and that's really what it's about. So here we are in 2019. And that credit card now has a balance of over $22,000. And the interest rate is right around 2% or a little bit less. So 2% of $22 trillion is $440 billion. So the volume, see, the key here is not the interest rate. It's the volume of interest you pay. That applies the same way in debt planning and getting out of debt. But here's the federal government, and in 2008, their volume of interest on $8 trillion of debt was in the $440, $450 billion range. And here we are 11 years later, and the interest rate has come down and down and down. At the same time, the interest or the debt of the federal government has gone up and up and up. So now we're at $22+ trillion. And oh, by the way, your share of that as a taxpayer is $174,000, $175,000 per taxpayer. That has nothing to do with the unfunded liability. That's another discussion for another day about the usdebtclock.org. And I would highly encourage you to check that out and get an understanding to what the message that is in that usdebtclock.org. So here we are today, and they're talking about interest rates and no inflation and everything going on. And I really believe it's almost it's almost like a fraud. In other words, they're not being completely honest. The news media, the business channels, and all of them are talking about the economy and the stock market and on and on and on. Well, this artificially low interest rate has a multitude of problems that it creates. And what it does is it is the feeder of boom and bust cycles based on Austrian economic studies that I've done. So here's my message today. My message to you today is be careful listening to politicians and the news media talking about this interest rate, because it is nothing more than they have to control the interest rate and keep it extremely low so that the interest they pay on the $22 trillion of debt, again, the volume of interest today isn't really much more than it was 11 years ago. Because see, if the interest rates went back to 6% where they were in 2007, 6% on $22 trillion is $1.4 trillion. That's close to 40% of the total government revenue last year, which was $3.2 trillion, but they spent $4.1 trillion. They borrowed $900 billion, which was added to the debt, our credit card, and which now takes it over $22 trillion. So that's all I really wanted to talk about today, because my purpose is through prosperity economics thinking. I want you to develop prosperity thinking is really what I want to do. And the first principle of prosperity economics and prosperity thinking is thinking. And for the next few blogs, I'm going to put one onto these here once a week. For the next few weeks, we're going to talk about thinking. And I'm going to get in your mind and I'm going to stretch you and get you to start thinking about things that you should be thinking about instead of being told what to think by the people that simply want to sell you stuff. Hey, God bless. I'm Tom Young, the professor of financial education. By the way, the new book is going to be out in the next 60 days, The Family Money Farm, the CFO Project. And I think it will be a good addition to your library and give you some real insight on how to create wealth. God bless. Signing off. Bye-bye.